So today's video is going to be about using your DIY yarn swift, and I'm going to use a medicine bottle to wind the yarn around. And I took the lid off of mine just so I could tell the difference and not throw this one away. You don't have to take the label off, it makes no difference, but if you want to, you can spray it down with WD-40, wait about a minute, and then wash it as normal, and the label will just come right off. So I'm using a yarn from Knit Picks, and it is called Hawthorn, and it's a fingering weight, and the color here is Compass. It's like a sunflower yellow color. I will unwind it, and I keep my Swift not expanded all the way so it's easier to get the yarn off of it, and then once you get the yarn on, you can expand it. And you want to make sure that every skein of yarn comes with little figure eights at either side of the skein. You want to make sure that those are off, otherwise your winding will get interrupted. And on this particular skein, one of them is also wrapped around the ends of the yarn, so you can just cut them both at the same time. It doesn't really matter which direction you wind it. I like to go with the one that is not as well placed underneath the skein because one, it will be harder to get it out, and two, the loose part, the part that's looser, it will get stuck underneath the Lazy Susan part of the Swift, and it's not fun to try to get it off of there. Also remember to take the label off. So to use the medicine bottle, you just stick the tail of the yarn in a few inches and then put the lid on, and that's not going to hurt the yarn at all, and this part usually is weaved into the project at the end anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. It works best if you have your Swift at a pretty even height with where you're pulling from. So if you have it on a table like this, I would recommend sitting down rather than standing up, and if you're standing up, having it on a taller table. So you just start winding around the bottle, and it doesn't really matter where you put it. I like to wind it starting towards the lid first, but not on the lid. That's really important because you're going to take it off later. So I like to wind starting towards the top of the lid and get the yarn around. You can see that the first little bit, while you're getting a good piece of yarn on the bottle, it's kind of slow going, but it will speed up later. Okay, so you can see that I have a good bit on the bottle at this point, and right now I've started switching between winding it diagonally down, like I'm doing right now, and winding it diagonally up, like I'm doing right now. And I don't think this strictly makes super tons of difference, but I think that it makes it more even while you're winding it. And this is why I didn't go all the way down to the bottom of the bottle, because when you do that, it will start crossing at the bottom, and it's a little harder to keep the yarn on the bottle when you're doing that. The top parts here tend to slip down, and every once in a while I just change where I'm winding the yarn, and so you won't get just like two places on the ball that are being crossed with the yarn. You want to kind of spread it out so that it looks a little more even when you're done. It makes it a little easier to pull things. And this will be a center pull ball of yarn when I am done. Well, it'll be a center pull cake of yarn, but same difference. Okay, so at this point you can see that I've wound probably 3/4 of the skein onto the bottle, and the cake is getting thick enough now that I could probably just take it off of the bottle, but I like to leave it on because I think it's a little bit easier. And at this point it'll go pretty quickly, and you can see that I am again just winding it towards on the diagonal towards the bottom, and I'm moving the cake every few winds, probably every 10 go rounds of the Swift, maybe a little more than that. You'll figure out a rhythm once you do it once or twice, and it will make a lot of sense and be kind of pretty intuitive. It's a very similar process to just winding a ball of yarn, which I think most knitters have done at some point or another in their lives. And again, I'm trying not to wrap the bottom of the bottle because once you do that, it's just a little harder to get off. It's not a big deal if it happens, but it's not ideal, or at least I found it isn't for me. If it works for you, go for it. Okay, so we're getting down to the very last of the skein of yarn. You can tell that I have quite the cake going on. This length of medicine bottle makes a pretty short but wide cake. If you find that that doesn't work for you, or you just don't like the way it looks or whatever, you can use a longer or wider bottle, and it'll give you different results, obviously. And when you're getting down to where it's wrapped around only about 5 or 6 times around your swift, you'll want to think about starting to end the cake. And I'm almost there. You can see that mine is wrapped around the bottom a little bit, and that's fine. What you want to try to avoid is like a really thick wrapping of yarn underneath there, because it will make it hard to push out, which we're going to do here in just a second. So to end the cake, you've probably seen them do this when you get your yarn wound at the yarn store. You're just going to wind it widthwise around the whole cake for a little while. I actually maybe started a little too soon. You can do this with much fewer strands if you want. And this just kind of secures the yarn so that it doesn't unwind on the other end while you're trying to use it. And so when you get to the end of the piece of yarn, you'll wind it around and then pick up a little piece from the yarn that you just wound around and tuck it underneath so that it kind of looks like that. You can do it with fewer if you want. And this will hold it in place until you get towards the very end. And then to get out the medicine bottle, I usually push it from the bottom and pull it out. And then just take off the lid. And you have a center pull cake of yarn. And you can't really even tell at all where the lid met the bottle. So there's really no break in the yarn or fraying or anything. And then you can just pull from the inside here, just like a normal cake of yarn. It looks a little flatter and wider than what you get when you have a regular ball winder, but it works really well, and most people have these handy, so it's really easy to use. You can use other types of bottles as well. I would stay away from ones that have a lot of screws to screw on a cap to the bottle portion of it, but you can use those if you need to, something like a small peanut butter jar or a small honey jar or something like that. That works fine as well. It'll just give you a larger cake if that bothers you at all. So that's how you use the DIY yarn swift and very cheap ball winder. Have a great day, everyone.